My parents lived lavishly while I struggled through college. Now they're broke and expect me to save them. I refused, and it's tearing my family apart. I, 26F, recently graduated with my master's degree and landed a great job. Here's the thing. My parents never helped me with my education. They flat out refused to contribute a dime and told me if I wanted to go to college, I had to figure it out on my own. Meanwhile, they lived comfortably, took fancy vacations, bought new cars, and even did expensive home renovations. At the time, it hurt that they wouldn't support me, but I worked part-time jobs, took out loans, and made it through on my own. Now, my parents are nearing retirement and have started hinting that they expect me to help them financially because they didn't save enough. I finally snapped and told them that just because they brought me into this world doesn't mean they're entitled to my money. I laid out everything they did while I was struggling in school and told them they should have thought about their retirement before wasting money on luxuries. I said I wasn't their personal safety net and that they're going to have to figure it out, just like I had to. My mom broke down crying, saying they sacrificed so much for me growing up and now I'm turning my back on them. My dad was furious and accused me of being ungrateful and selfish. He even threw in, "We raised you for 18 years and this is the thanks we get?" My siblings are now calling me a brat, saying it's cruel to let our parents suffer, especially since I'm the most financially secure out of all of us. But I can't help feeling like they made their bed and now they need to lie in it. Here's where it gets even messier. I also said I'd never take care of them when they're old, and that if they end up in a bad spot, that's on them, not me. My siblings are horrified I'd go that far, but I'm standing my ground. ATA for refusing to help my parents with their retirement, even if they end up broke and struggling? Update 1. All right. So after posting this and seeing all the responses, I knew I wasn't the only one questioning my decision, but it also opened my eyes to the full impact this situation was having on me. The guilt was real, and I started second-guessing myself. I was standing my ground because, to be honest, I was still angry. Angry that my parents had the means to help but chose not to. Angry that they were living in luxury while I was eating ramen noodles and working my ass off to survive in school. But then the guilt kicked in hard. I mean, these are my parents, right? The people who raised me, who I'm supposed to love and respect. That lingering guilt made me rethink my next steps, but that didn't mean I was ready to cave just yet. So, my parents got wind of the fact that I wasn't budging. They realized I wasn't going to swoop in and rescue them like some knight in financial armor, and my dad, of course, wasn't having it. Cue the dreaded family meeting. Yes, they pulled out the big guns, a full-blown intervention with my siblings. I didn't even know it was happening until I got a text from my older brother saying, "We need to talk. Family meeting at Mom and Dad's tomorrow at 6. You know that feeling when your stomach drops and you just know it's about to get messy? Yeah, that was me. I show up the next day, and it's just like I imagined. My parents sitting there with their disappointment painted all over their faces. My siblings glaring at me like I'm some kind of monster. My dad wasted no time jumping right into it, saying they couldn't believe I was being so heartless. He went on about how they did everything for us, worked hard to give us a good life, and this is how I repay them, by turning my back on them in their time of need. My mom chimed in, saying they were always there for me, and now it was my turn to be there for them. I sat there, trying to stay calm, but I could feel my blood boiling. My older brother starts in, saying that it's family responsibility to take care of each other, and I'm the one who's financially secure, so it makes sense for me to step up. My younger sister, who still lives at home by the way, just nodded along, like she wasn't part of the problem. She hasn't paid rent in years, but she's acting like she's got all the answers. I told them all I wasn't backing down. I reminded my parents of every vacation they took, every new car they bought, every renovation they did while I was struggling to make ends meet. I said that I didn't owe them anything, that they made choices with their money, and now they have to live with those choices. My dad lost it. He stood up and yelled, "We raised you. We gave you everything and now you're leaving us to rot?" I've never seen him so angry. At this point, my older brother said, "So what? You're just going to let Mom and Dad live on the streets when they can't afford their house anymore?" And I said, "If it comes to that, It's on them, not me. I could see the shock on everyone's faces. They couldn't believe I'd said it, but it was the truth. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into bailing them out. The meeting ended with my dad storming out, my mom crying, and my siblings telling me I was heartless. I left, feeling drained but also resolute. I wasn't going to be manipulated no matter how bad they tried to make me feel. But here's the kicker. After the family meeting, my mom sent me a long, emotional text. She said she never wanted it to come to this, that they had always hoped I'd step up willingly. She told me they were struggling more than I realized, that things had gotten worse financially, and they might lose the house soon. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to tell her it wasn't my problem, but another part of me felt a pang of guilt, thinking about my parents losing everything. So now I'm stuck between wanting to stay strong and feeling like a complete villain for not helping. My siblings are still furious, and my dad isn't speaking to me at all. My mom's guilt-tripping texts haven't stopped, and I'm honestly starting to wonder if I went too far. Update 2. I was trying to stay low-key after the whole family meeting disaster, but things took a turn I didn't see coming. My parents' financial problems are apparently way worse than they let on, and I only found out because of my sister. Yeah, the same sister who has been living rent-free at their place. Turns out she's been snooping through their stuff and found out that my parents have been hiding some major financial skeletons. One night, she calls me up, which is weird because we aren't exactly close. She says, "I need to talk to you. I found something and it's bad." I didn't know what to expect, but curiosity got the best of me, so I agreed to meet her. We go to this random coffee shop and she pulls out a folder. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? She opens it up and shows me all these bills and letters from creditors. Turns out, my parents aren't just bad with money, they're drowning in debt. I'm talking massive credit card debt, unpaid loans, and even a second mortgage on the house. And here's the kicker. They've been hiding it from everyone, including my siblings. Apparently, they've been living off credit for years, using loans to fund their vacations, cars, and renovations. The reason they're so desperate now is that everything is finally catching up to them. They're on the verge of losing the house because they haven't been able to make payments on the second mortgage. And they're terrified of anyone finding out because they've been putting up this front that they're financially comfortable. My sister's freaking out, saying, "We have to do something, because if they lose the house, she'll be out on the street too." But all I can think is, are you kidding me? They've been lying to us this whole time, pretending everything's fine while they were literally sinking. I was pissed. Not just at them, but at the fact that they had the audacity to come to me for money without being honest about what was really going on. I asked my sister why she hadn't told anyone sooner, and she said she only found out because she opened a letter by accident. Now, she's in full panic mode, saying we need to come up with a plan to save the house, or else it's all going to come crashing down. She's trying to convince me that we should pull together as a family and help them out. But here's the thing. I feel like they've been manipulating us this whole time. They made us believe they were fine. And now that the truth is out, they're expecting us to clean up the mess they made. It's hard to feel any sympathy when they've been so irresponsible. And on top of that, they were living large while I was struggling in school, working multiple jobs just to get by. So I told my sister that I wasn't sure if I wanted to get involved. She freaked out, saying that if we don't help, Mom and Dad will lose everything. I told her that maybe that's the reality check they need. She called me cold and heartless, but I just couldn't see myself bailing them out after everything they've done. I left the coffee shop feeling more conflicted than ever. My parents have been lying to us, but now that the truth is out, I don't know what to do. Should I help them even though they've been hiding this from us? Or should I stick to my guns and let them deal with the consequences of their actions? Update 3. After finding out about my parents' secret debt, I needed some space to think. I decided to take a few days to clear my head before making any decisions. But then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my mom. She was crying, saying that my dad had made a drastic decision. Apparently, after realizing that they couldn't fix their financial situation, my dad decided to file for bankruptcy without telling anyone. I was shocked. My mom was hysterical on the phone, saying she didn't know what to do. They were going to lose everything. The house, the cars, everything they'd worked for. It felt like the world was spinning out of control. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, trying to process everything my mom was telling me. My dad filed for bankruptcy, just like that, without consulting anyone. My first thought was, how could he do this without even talking to us, without giving us a chance to figure things out? I mean, I get it. They were in way over their heads, but making such a huge decision without a word felt like a betrayal all over again. My mom kept going on, crying about how everything was falling apart, how they were going to lose the house, how my dad was too proud to ask for help. But now it was too late. It felt like she was trying to guilt me into doing something, but all I could feel was a weird mix of anger and maybe a little relief. I know that sounds terrible, but part of me felt like this was the inevitable consequence of their decisions. Like maybe now they'd finally have to face the music. I told my mom I'd need some time to think, and I hung up. I couldn't handle it right then. I needed to talk to someone, but I knew my siblings would be no help. They were already so deep in denial about the whole situation, still clinging to the idea that our parents were just a little bad with money. But this was way more than that. This was a financial disaster, years in the making, and now the fallout was coming whether we liked it or not. I decided to call my older brother anyway. He needed to know what was happening, and maybe, just maybe, we could figure something out together. I told him everything, from my sister finding the debt letters to the bankruptcy bomb my mom just dropped. His reaction? Pure shock. He had no idea it was this bad. He'd always thought that, even if our parents weren't great at saving, they'd at least been responsible enough to keep the basics in check. He asked me, "What do we do now?" And honestly, I didn't have an answer. I told him that I wasn't sure we could do anything. The bankruptcy was already in motion, and from what I understood, once that ball starts rolling, it's hard to stop. They were going to lose the house, the cars, everything. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this might be exactly what needed to happen. I know that sounds cold, but hear me out. My parents had spent years living way beyond their means, refusing to face reality. If we bailed them out now, wouldn't it just enable them to keep making the same mistakes? My brother didn't like hearing that, though. He was still holding on to the idea that we could somehow swoop in and save the day. He started throwing out ideas like pooling our money together to help them, maybe buying the house ourselves and letting them live in it, or covering the mortgage for them until they got back on their feet. I shut that down real quick. I told him, "We're not their safety net. They've been lying to us for years, and now they have to deal with the consequences. We can't fix this for them." He was quiet for a long time after that, and I knew he was struggling with it. I could feel it too. That instinct to protect your parents, to take care of the people who raised you. But the truth was, they hadn't taken care of us in the same way. They hadn't saved for our education, hadn't set us up for success. Instead, they'd lived in their little fantasy world, and now it was crumbling around them. A few days later, things got even messier. My parents officially got notice that they would have to leave the house. My mom was a wreck, calling me nonstop, begging me to help. She kept saying, "We don't have anywhere else to go, we'll be homeless." I asked her what their plan was, if they had any backup savings or retirement funds they hadn't touched. But she just sobbed, saying there was nothing left. And then came the bombshell I wasn't expecting. My mom admitted that they had been using my siblings' names to take out loans. Yeah, you read that right. They had opened credit cards and taken out small loans in both my brother's and sister's names without telling them. It wasn't a huge amount, but still, it was enough to make me see red. How could they do that? How could they risk my siblings' financial futures like that, knowing they were already struggling too? I confronted my mom about it, and she was practically begging for forgiveness, saying they didn't have any other choice, that they were desperate, and it was just temporary. I told her that was no excuse, and now they'd not only ruined their own finances, but had also put my siblings at risk. I couldn't believe it. Any shred of sympathy I had left for them was gone. I called my brother right after and told him what Mom said. He didn't believe me at first, but when I sent him the proof, my sister had found the paperwork stashed in their office. He was furious. My sister was already freaking out because she had noticed her credit score dropping for no reason, but she hadn't connected the dots until now. Both of them were livid, but they didn't know what to do next. I decided to talk to a lawyer. I wanted to know what our options were and if there was any way we could protect ourselves from the fallout of our parents' financial disaster. The lawyer was blunt. There wasn't much we could do about the bankruptcy, but we could potentially press charges or at least force our parents to pay back the loans taken out in my siblings' names. But that would mean taking them to court, and none of us were ready for that kind of family war. At least not yet. In the end, my siblings and I had a serious conversation. We agreed that we couldn't trust our parents anymore. Not with money, not with anything. My brother suggested cutting them off entirely, but I wasn't sure I could go that far. As angry as I was, as betrayed as I felt, part of me still couldn't imagine abandoning them completely. They were still our parents, and even though they'd made terrible choices, it felt wrong to just leave them to fend for themselves. We haven't made any final decisions yet, but one thing is clear: we're not bailing them out. They're going to lose the house, and they're going to have to figure out where to go from here. My siblings are still processing everything, and we're all trying to figure out how to move forward without letting this destroy our relationship with each other. But with our parents, things will never be the same. I don't know what the future holds for my family, but one thing's for sure: I'm not going to let them drag me down with them. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. As harsh as it sounds, maybe this is the wake-up call they needed all along.